Hey everyone, so at the time that you're watching this video, I have lived in Los Angeles longer than I've lived in any city other than my hometown, which is absolutely crazy. So I thought in commemoration of me having lived here so long, I would do a video explaining the tips that I wish people had told me when I moved to Los Angeles. Hopefully these tips can help people who are looking to move here or people who just want to visit and want to know some facts about LA that they might not know otherwise. The reason that I moved to Los Angeles was because I wanted a change in my life and I wanted a big city to start my career as a designer. At the time of filming this, I'm a little cynical about this city just because of the whole global pandemic thing, but I'm still really happy that I moved here. There are a lot of things that I wish that I could have done differently when I moved here, but I learned a lot of lessons from it. So here are some tips about LA that I wish people had told me. Also, side note guys, if you hear any weird sounds in the background, it's because I'm babysitting a cat right now. No, why are you climbing on my couch? Say hi. Oh my goodness, he's so cute. If you watch my videos, you know I really like cats. In check, Kotysan. He doesn't want to participate in this exploitation. Number one is driving, which is probably the first thing that many people start off with. LA is a very widespread city, and in order to get from any place to another, you probably will have to drive. I think most people know that you have to drive around LA, but I just want to emphasize that in order to have a comfortable lifestyle here, it is pretty important that you have a car, especially if you have a long work commute. It makes life here a lot easier. It's also important if you want to visit friends that might be on the other side of the city, and just being able to have general control of your life here because everything is so spread out. If you're just visiting, I do recommend renting a car, or if it's just for a few days, I recommend picking the specific places you want to go to and planning some Uber routes beforehand. The drivers here are terrible, and you have to be an aggressive driver in order to navigate around here successfully. I have driven around New York City and a lot of major American cities, and LA is still the hardest one for me, so I would recommend, if you're not familiar with the traffic here, practice beforehand and just be prepared to be a little more aggressive. There's also a lot of unspoken driving rules here that in any other city in America would be completely unacceptable. One of them is that you don't turn left on a green light because usually there's too much oncoming traffic. So whenever you turn left, you usually have to wait until the light is either yellow or red, and most people won't be angry at you for that because it's pretty normal. Prepare to spend a lot of time on the road. I will probably be the only person on the internet to say this, but I don't mind driving all the time. If you're like me, you can use the time to have a dance party and sing. Number two, parking is very confusing here. Every neighborhood here has different parking rules and availabilities, so it does take a little bit of time and adjustment to know which neighborhoods are easier to park in versus not. For example, whenever I go to my doctor that's located in a city with very little street parking, I always pay $22 to park, and this is just because there's no street parking available in that neighborhood. It can also be this way with friends or other destinations that you want to visit, so you kind of arrange plans based on the parking situation sometimes. Parking tickets are expensive and they're given very freely. The parking signs are each stacked on top of one another, and whenever you park your car on the street, make sure to read the signs and check that you are in fact there during a legal time. Sometimes signs will contradict one another, so one sign will have a rule and the sign below it will say that that sign is invalid, so you just have to read through every sign like a book. Honestly, LA parking signs are like their own form of science, and I have gotten 14 since I moved here, so I guess that means I failed. Number three, safeties. This is going to be a generalizing statement, and every city has good and bad parts, but I don't consider LA to be a super safe city. Especially as a woman, I don't feel comfortable walking around the city alone. So, for example, one of my first apartments in LA was in Central Hollywood, and I didn't know the safety of the neighborhood at that time when I was staying there. So I was walking around the streets of the area on the phone, having a normal afternoon stroll, when suddenly 3 huge guys came up behind me and started chasing me down the sidewalk. I was in a full-on sprint and I ran about 3 blocks until I was lucky enough to find a security center in Hollywood. I had to hide in the security center with all the guards, and I spent a couple hours with the security there making sure that those guys were nowhere to be found, and they drove me home to make sure I was safe. But it was a really scary experience, and it kind of shook up my whole perception on the safety of Los Angeles. You need to understand the safety of the neighborhood that you stay in because it dramatically affects your experience of LA, and this is one of the most important things that I wish someone had told me before I came here. If you have a friend who's from Los Angeles or who knows the area, have them check out the area that you're thinking of staying before you come, ideally, or just do some research and reviews on the place and do some searches to see what the crime rates in the area are. And the last thing I'll say on this topic is that many of you know there is a large homeless population in Los Angeles, which is really sad and heartbreaking, and more needs to be done about that. But that does affect the safety of some neighborhoods as well, so just keep that in mind when you're coming here. And certain neighborhoods like Santa Monica or downtown LA have a large homeless population, and that does affect the culture of that part of the city. Number 4, everyone has a weird job or a weird way to describe their job. There's a good and a bad side to this. The bad, people talk themselves up when they don't deserve it. The good, there's a lot of unusual jobs and lifestyles, so you can find whatever kind of job best fits for you. The other good thing about these weird jobs is that you are exposed to a ton of completely different lifestyles. For me, I found that to be a really big positive, to see people who are full-time freelancers or full-time content creators versus just having a normal 9-to-5 job. Seeing the way that other people structure their life can help you decide more of what you want in your own life and what might work for you. Number 5 is name dropping. I feel like the city is the capital of name dropping and making yourself seem more important than you actually are. So at almost every party you go to, there will be someone who will say that they're best friends with a celebrity, even if they've never met them. Because Los Angeles is such a huge city, there are people here that are friends with major celebrities, but I think most of those people don't talk about it and they're a lot more humble. Number 6. Entry-level job instability. I can make a whole video about my career trajectory in Los Angeles. If you guys want to see that, comment down below. But when I first moved to Los Angeles, I moved here for a fashion design job. I wanted to be in the fashion industry, but it wasn't until my first job here that I realized how unstable in general that industry is here. My first company went bankrupt, and after that I had some contract jobs that would promise to be a short-time contract and then be full-time after a certain period of time, and many of those did not pan out. I felt like I was being led by a carrot on a string, but the end goal never happened, and this led me to have a lot of contract jobs and freelance jobs just in order to make ends meet. I consider myself a stable worker and a monogamous person whenever it comes to any kind of relationship, friendship, job, and this was really difficult for me to transition into. Again, this is a person-to-person experience. However, when I talk to my friends about this topic, many of them have expressed that across creative fields, they've noticed an instability in the entry-level jobs. They felt strung along by a freelance opportunity, contract position, or an internship, only for it to suddenly disappear and poof out of existence for financial reasons. I'm not sure what the cause behind this is, but my theory is that employees want to get the most that they can for the least amount of money. So if a contractor is willing to be paid less than a full-time employee for the same job, they're just going to hire more contractors for shorter periods of time. A lot of employers don't want to hire someone full-time because that means they have to pay their Social Security and taxes and healthcare, and I found a lot of companies aren't willing to do that. It's really upsetting, but that's just kind of the world we live in here. Many of my friends have turned to freelancing, starting their own business, or switching to a more stable industry in order to make their ends meet. Number 7, dating culture. Ooh, this is gonna be a fun one. Dating culture here is unique and generally pretty non-committal. One thing I find kind of strange is within the first few minutes of meeting someone, they will usually ask you what you do for a living. So it'll be like, "Hi, how are you?" "I'm good."
"So what do you do?"
It's like they're trying to size you up and figure out what place in society you're in before they commit more time on that date. Coming from a girl's perspective, I'm gonna make some strong generalizations about guys I've dated separated here. Obviously, this doesn't apply to every guy. There are good guys everywhere, but I've noticed many guys here are very hesitant to settle down. There's a lot of beautiful people here of both genders. They always want to make sure they're not missing out on something, and it creates this culture of ambiguity. I've also met men that are trying to gauge how useful you are to them, and it's just a very rare experience to meet a guy who has genuine intentions. I consider those guys rare gems. Number 8, the friend culture. I'm just going to talk about the general culture of relationships and friendships here. It's also pretty non-committal. I don't know if you're starting to see a theme here. Many people keep relationships at surface level and have disingenuous positivity and try to gauge how useful you are to them, which makes me absolutely sick to say, but that's just how some people are. There are genuine people here, but it does take some time to find them. You also have to make a really large effort to maintain relationships. Because the city is so spread out, you have to commit a lot of time to driving to hang out with a person, and oftentimes you will have to reserve a chunk of your day for one person. So it is important that you prioritize who you want in your life and make an effort to let them know that you appreciate them. A lot of people here are flaky and they want to make sure that they're not missing out on some fun event, so they won't tell you that they're attending an event until the last second, or they will dip out on an event at the very last second. So there's a lot of non-committalness there too. The layout of LA is very widespread, and developing friends takes time, but there are good people in friendships. There's good people in relationships. You just have to dig to find them. Okay, number 9. Ambitious people, or the positive side of the friend culture, in my opinion. Although you have to fish through some fake people, there are a lot of ambitious people who move to Los Angeles to achieve their dreams, and being around people like that inspires you to be more of your best self. I have not found many other places in the world like this, but it is so inspiring to be around the right people when you do find them. Number 10, neighborhood personalities. So every neighborhood has a very different personality. For instance, Beverly Hills has the classic LA rich blonde girl posh vibe. Venice Beach has more of the vegan spiritual surfer vibe, and Silver Lake and Echo Park have the artsy too cool for you hipster vibe. So every neighborhood feels completely different and has a completely different vibe. Before you decide on a neighborhood, you need to figure out the vibe of the neighborhood you want to live in and figure out if that's the vibe you want to be in. Number 11. People use the word vibe way too much. Number 12. The fashion style here is very trendy. I don't notice as much highbrow style as I do in cities like New York or London. It's a lot more casual here, and people will wear athletic clothes to do normal day-to-day activities. It's just casual. Number 13, the weather is not overrated. The nature here is probably one of the things that is a selling point for me. There are many nature areas in or near LA that you can escape to, so I've never felt stuck in this city like I have in other ones. Obviously, it is warm pretty much all year round, and you're a couple hours away from every different kind of nature that you can imagine. If you drive one way, you'll hit a desert, another way you'll hit the ocean, another way you'll hit mountains, and another way you'll hit Mexico. Number 14, the last thing that I wish someone told me when I moved to Los Angeles. That I would be stranded in Los Angeles during a global pandemic, surrounded by people that believe that pandemic isn't real, science isn't real, masks won't help you, while racial division and protests tear apart people in your community, and you are sitting in your room having constant anxiety attacks from the overwhelm and wanting to meet new people, but not really having a way to except through the internet. So I guess I'm just gonna move there. But probably not, because I'm struggling to upload even once a week. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below. If you're thinking of moving to or visiting Los Angeles, I hope this video gave you some tips on the city that you may not have known before. Although some of these tips are a little more cynical, I am actually glad that I moved here and for the positive experiences that I've had. I've learned a lot of lessons, so I hope that it has helped you in some way too. Comment down below any other questions you might have about Los Angeles. I will try and answer as many of them in the comments as I can. So until next time, guys, thank you for watching this, and I'll see you next time. Bye!